Hello everybody, X here, back at it again to give you another very exciting video. And for today, honestly, have you sat down and thought, how many new games are we getting versus remakes slash remasters? Let's just, take an example of the big three, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony. Nintendo, usually does all right with most of their stuff. They got a good chunk of new games in comparison to their remaster ports or whatnot, though, maybe Wii U ports and stuff like that. But if you especially start looking to the ball games of Sony and Microsoft, when you start comparing them, it's quite a bit. That ratio is almost kind of even, and it might be starting to tip a little bit more so, more ways than not, with a lot of their games though. But in today's video, I wanted to go through and talk about new games versus remakes or slash remasters in terms of the ratio of games we're kind of getting for both sides of the spectrum, and whether or not is the industry starting to make a shift when you start especially comparing the development times that it takes for games to be made. Like now it's almost the span of 5 to 7 years. So I just kind of want to take the time just to kind of, bring this to everybody's awareness and where, the status of games and what we could be potentially seeing here off in the fairly distant future though. But if you hadn't already done so, make sure you go and hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell. Stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight into this video. Alright, so first off, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the track records for, Sony with their release of PS5 starting in 2020, the Xbox Series X and S, as well as Nintendo, which we'll timestamp it. We'll start off, around that holiday time frame, basically November onward. We'll compare each one of the three, series and see, how many games have we gotten out for each system. Because mind you, when you look at PlayStations as well as, Xboxes, it's fairly limited with the games that have been able to put out by their first party studios, and even more so limited when you talk about when they were mentioning the term next gen, which now is current gen. Matter of fact, how many games are actually exclusively for that brand new PS5 or Xbox Series X or S. So let's go ahead and jump over to the Sony side of things. So at least with their list, you can start off in 2020 with their few games that are launched, which mind you, all of these things I'm about to talk about, they're just going to be brand new games. They're not going to include remakes and they're not going to include any remasters. We're just looking at everything that's brand new, so that way I can kind of compare and contrast all the new games versus we're getting versus, remaster or remake games that we might potentially get. Now, in terms of new stuff we got, it was Astro's Playroom, Sackboy's Big Adventure, and Spider-Man Miles Morales. Out of all three of those games, the only one that was the new current gen at that moment was Astro's Playroom. That was the only thing from 2020. When you look at 2021, we had Destruction All-Stars, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Returnal, and MLB The Show. And out of all of those, every one of them except for MLB The Show were all exclusive to that new generation. So far the list wasn't looking too bad, but then when you start looking at 2022, things changed a little bit more so, because then you managed to have Horizon, Call of the Mountain, Gran Turismo 7, God of War Ragnarok, and MLB The Show 2022. All of those games are great, but if you look at that long list of games, nothing was really exclusive to the current gen that we're currently residing in now. All of those games I just mentioned also have like PS4 versions as well. So it's kind of interesting, and I think that's the main thing a lot of people been kind of talking about, was the fact that, especially with the PlayStation, Xbox Series X and S, there's not a lot of exclusive games that you can only find just on that PlayStation 5 right now as of this current moment though. And at least with Sony's side of things, it's a little bit better than the Xbox side of things. We'll look over that here in just a minute though. But it is kind of interesting how, in terms of brand new games, ones that are not including remakes or remasters, stuff like that, especially for the games that are only for this current gen, they're almost like a dime a dozen or shit. Now let's go ahead and spin it over here to the Xbox side of things. So at least with Xbox, this is really interesting right here, because the fact that if you start looking at this list right here, everything that got launched within that 2020 window frame when the Series X and S dropped, they were just all shiny new versions for the brand new system, but they all released either earlier that year or actually like maybe a year or two beforehand. Like Forza Horizon 4, Gears 5, Gears Tactics, Ori Will of the Wisps, Sea of Thieves, Halo the Master Chief Collection. All of those games managed to have previous versions that dropped on the previous systems well before the Series X or S managed to make it onto the market. So then you start really thinking, well, that was kind of like their launch lineup of things, like where was the brand new game? Mind you, Halo Infinite was technically supposed to be the game that was supposed to drop out on that year that the series was supposed to come out. Literally was supposed to be the flagship game for that system. They literally even had Series X's with the Master Chief and whatnot though. That dude was on the face of the whole entire box. I don't know how you don't have that branding up on that box and not manage to ship that out, because that game managed to get delayed into 2021. So it was kind of a very bare launch though. And then when we start looking at games in 2021, we managed to have Flight Simulator, Psychonauts 2, Forza Horizon 5, as well as Halo Infinite. All of those managed to come out in 2021. The only exclusive ones for the Series X or S was literally Flight Simulator. All the other ones worked with Xbox One as well as the Series X and S. Then when you look over here at 2022, you had Pentiment. That was it. That was basically it. And that was, that's where a lot of people are starting to wonder, like, where are the big heavy hitters? Remind you, Redfall as well as Starfield were supposed to come out that year. They delayed them into next year. So it was almost like a dark period for Xbox in terms of their first party studio releases. Mind you, Xbox just managed to buy Bethesda Studios. So that should be a whole bunch of games that should be coming out. And then now they're on the doorstep of almost managing to purchase Activision Blizzard. So they have all these studios over here, yet they're not managing to put out a lot of games. It's, kind of a little bit of red flags right there though. But in 2023, where we're in right now, they did manage to drop out Hi-Fi Rush, which from the looks of it, that's actually a game that kind of came out by surprise. It was a shadow drop. It was kind of unexpected. It's a, rhythm game and, flashy, colorful, kind of things that kind of break the status quo, what you kind of normally think of Xbox games. So I'll give them that one though. And that was about it. In terms of that whole entire list, you only had like, 2 games that was exclusively for that series system, one being Flight Simulator, the other one being Hi-Fi Rush. And that's really interesting right there. So you can see in that Xbox list, it was, a lot lower in terms of the amount of games that they managed to put out in comparison to Sony. Now let's go ahead and look at Nintendo. Now I know Nintendo has a whole entire different ballpark though, and you're about to see here in just a bit though. But at least with Nintendo 2020, that was a COVID year, so you can kind of give them a little bit of a break. But that was the only game they managed to drop out there. And this is, basically holiday time, November. To compare it with Sony and Microsoft, we're talking about November onward. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was the only one that dropped out. I know you technically had Animal Crossing New Horizons dropped out earlier this year, but for the sake of comparison, we'll just start off with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity though. So that was the only thing we basically got for 2020. Then in 2021, you had a whole lot of hitters. Big Brain Academy, Brain vs. Brain, Game Builder Garage, Mario Golf Super Rush, Metroid Dread, Miitopia, New Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Unite, Super Mario 3D World, plus the Bowser's Fury side is the part I want to emphasize on. Not necessarily the 3D World, because that's technically, remade or whatnot though, but the Bowser's Fury side was new. And then you had WarioWare Get It Together. That was all the games you got that were brand new, not including remakes or remaster in that year. 2022, you had Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Nintendo Switch Sports, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hosts, Mario Strikers Battle League, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Pokemon Legends Arceus, Splatoon 3, and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So that was a lot of heavy hitters. And then the one thing that we got managed to drop this year so far in 2023 was none other than Fire Emblem Engage. So you can look at Nintendo's and compare it to Sony and Xbox's. Nintendo manages to somehow have a consistent flow to their things. It's not necessarily a lot of dead time between most of their first party things. That doesn't even include a lot of remakes and remasters that I excluded out on this list. Like for example, Metroid Prime Remaster was something that we just recently got right here though. And I didn't even have that up on the list because I'm excluding the remakes and remaster though, whatnot though. So with the exception of Nintendo, when you look at Sony and Microsoft, they don't have a lot of games that are coming out at the production line like what Nintendo does. But at least the one thing you can kind of universally look at, especially with Sony and Microsoft, if you look at the games that I mentioned that were brand new and bring up other games that I didn't mention, like maybe with Sony with like Returnals or The Last of Us Remake Part 1, if you start looking at games that I didn't even mention like that and compare them to the other games we managed to get out that year, that ratio is almost kind of getting close to 50-50 ratio. Like literally, as I was looking back at my list, I think for Sony in the year like 2022, they only managed to drop about 3 games plus your MLB The Show, so technically 4. That's a kind of a low number comparison to like what Nintendo was doing now. And I feel like at least with the industry moving forward, you're gonna see a lot more remakes and remasters, or just ports, but a lot of remakes and remasters of games that, have been, X amount of years ago, and they're bringing it up to modern times. And I feel like that's going to be the easiest things for these big companies to do, considering the fact that, hey, development times, they're taking about 5 to 7 years now. If we were to take, in the picture, if a game was starting to be developed right now in 2023, 5 years from now, at a minimum, that's going to put you in 2028. Let's say they're developing for like a PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. That's 2028. Those systems came out in 2020. Console lifetimes usually like the last 6 years, so that's literally going to be a game that will be developed not for this current gen, it technically be the next gen, the PlayStation 6 and onward though. So it's like, what the actual heck? So literally, I think in terms of the gaming industry and where we're currently at right now, I'm just thinking we're going to get a lot more remasters and remakes. There's already like a footprint for where the game was going with the direction, the story, and all that stuff. And that just basically kind of paves the way forward for all these future games that they could potentially, pull on their back catalog of stuff, easily remake it for modern audiences, and then put that out. That will actually kind of bridge the gaps between their bigger projects, those 5 to 7 year things that they start brand new. I feel like that's where the industry is really starting to go. Like taking, for example, Metroid Prime series. We know Metroid Prime 4 was announced early in the Switch's life, 2017, and we know that it got rebooted and re-scrapped 2 years later when they made that special video announcement. And then since then, it's been kind of radio silent though. But in that span of time, we just recently got Metroid Prime Remaster, and it wouldn't surprise me we would get Metroid Prime Remaster 2 and 3 before Metroid Prime 4 even drops out. See what I mean with the, bridging with the remaster versus remakes and stuff like that? Even when you look on Sony's side of things, they just dropped, not too long ago, The Last of Us Part 2. Yet, here they are again, dropping, The Last of Us Part 1, a remake, even though previously in the PlayStation 4 generation, they technically had a remaster for that one. So it's like, that was a really quick turnaround time. Yes, they can kind of use it for the excuse of trying to get familiar with the new hardware and stuff. So whatever game or project they work on after the fact, they already have some experience, which, kind of all makes sense from the business kind of scope of things though. But outside of that, I don't know. I didn't kind of like or agree with that decision fully though. But, considering everything that's kind of going on right now, I just feel like with the way how the gaming industry is going towards, you're just going to see that ratio of new games versus remakes and remasters. They're going to get a little bit more 50-50-ish. Even when you look back at that previous Nintendo Direct, there wasn't like any brand new games that we saw in there that we didn't already know about. Like, for example, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, as well as Pikmin 4. We already knew about those couple games. Everything else that was up in there, for the most part, especially if you were looking at like first party things, or like remakes, remasters, or stuff like that though. So honestly, that's just something I was just kind of thinking about, and something I kind of want to shed the light, because I feel like that's just where we're going as a gaming industry though. I want to hear down in the comment section down below, what all are your thoughts on this remakes and remasters versus new games? Are you kind of getting tired of having to wait X amount of years for a brand new game? Like, look at Microsoft or whatnot though. They hadn't really had a good new game drop since like 2021, basically. 2022, not a lot of people might have gravitated towards that game that did drop, but finally in the month of May, hopefully, you'll get Redfall, and then a few months later, you'll get Starfield finally dropping. In terms of Sony's things, you hadn't had anything really since like God of War Ragnarok, really, to be honest. And Spider-Man 2 might be the next biggest thing, and that's going to come out hopefully in fall of this year though. And then when you look at Nintendo's release schedule, you had Fire Emblem Engage dropping out in January, but we got to wait all the way until May for Tears of the Kingdom, July for Pikmin 4. We don't really know much more that's coming after that in terms of like new stuff right there. So I don't know, this is something kind of, to keep in the back of your mind, and because these games are just taking a lot longer to make though. But y'all gotta let me know in the comment section down below what you think about this whole entire thing. But that's basically all I have to talk about in this video though. So if you really like it, make sure you're going to hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date. All things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing in the foreseeable future though. So remember y'all, until we have a video I make next, see y'all.